The Empire laughs. The Galactic Empire had conquered 17,000 star systems without ever learning how to doubt itself. From the Hall of Triumph, the Emperor could look out through transparent star crystal windows and see the capital world burning with light. Orbital rings glowed like halos. Fleets moved in perfect formation, their paths plotted centuries in advance by doctrine that had never failed. The Empire's strength was not merely its numbers, but its certainty. Every species it had broken believed the same lie in the beginning, that resistance mattered. When the Empire first encountered humanity, the High Council barely bothered to convene. Bipedal, one analyst reported, projecting a rotating hologram of a human body. Soft tissue, moderate skeletal density, limited natural weapons. Another voice followed. Emotionally unstable. Aggression spikes under stress. High casualty sensitivity. Laughter rippled through the chamber. The Empire had crushed species twice humanity's size and 10 times their lifespan. Humans arrived late to the galactic stage, their borders small, their fleets unremarkable, their diplomacy irritatingly polite. They spoke of treaties, mutual defense, and coexistence as though the galaxy had not already decided who ruled it. Still, protocol demanded a test. The border world of Karth Prime was chosen, an agricultural planet under Earth's protection, lightly defended and strategically insignificant. Imperial doctrine dictated that such a world would fall within hours. The message would be clear. Humanity could either kneel early or bleed slowly. The invasion began at dawn. Imperial warships emerged from hyperspace in flawless formation, blotting out the sun. Planetary defense grids collapsed under precision strikes. Ground forces deployed in disciplined waves, their banners unfurled for all to see. The Empire believed in spectacle. Fear was a tool, and visibility made fear efficient. Karth Prime fell by nightfall. The Empire waited for humanity's response. They expected outrage, threats, a desperate fleet movement, perhaps even a symbolic retaliation meant to preserve pride. Instead, there was nothing. No emergency session, no mobilization, no declaration of war. Earth's diplomatic channels remained open and eerily calm. The only transmission received was a brief acknowledgement of the invasion report, followed by silence. Imperial commanders were delighted. See, Grand Admiral Vorkesh said to the War Council, mandibles clicking in satisfaction. They lack resolve. The moment they face a real power, they retreat behind words. Orders were issued for Phase 2. Deeper incursions, heavier occupation forces, the gradual dismantling of human alliances. Humanity would be carved apart carefully to demonstrate the futility of resistance without provoking a reckless counterattack. That was when the first outpost went dark. Outpost Theta 9 was a listening station hidden inside an asteroid field far from Karth Prime. Its purpose was redundancy. Early warning, backup communication, nothing glamorous. When its signal vanished, Imperial technicians assumed equipment failure. They sent a maintenance shuttle. The shuttle never arrived. Within 12 hours, 3 more installations went silent. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply gone. No explosions, no debris fields, no emergency transmissions. Imperial intelligence began to murmur. Sensors showed no fleet movements, no hyperspace signatures, nothing large enough to explain the losses. The Empire prided itself on surveillance. Nothing crossed its borders unnoticed. Yet something had. On Karth Prime itself, occupation troops reported minor irregularities. Supply manifests didn't match physical inventories. Power grids fluctuated at odd intervals. Doors opened and closed without command authorization. The incidents were logged, dismissed, and forgotten, until a garrison commander failed to report for duty. They found him in his quarters, unharmed, sitting upright on his bed. His eyes were open. His pulse was steady. He refused to speak. Medical scans showed no physical injury, no neural damage. When asked what happened, he trembled and shook his head over and over, as if the answer itself might kill him. Security footage from the corridor outside his quarters showed nothing unusual until the lights went out for precisely 12 seconds. When they came back on, the commander was already broken. Across the Empire's frontier, similar reports emerged. Officers vanishing from sealed rooms. Encryption keys altered without breach. Entire patrol units relocated, alive, armed, and completely disoriented, miles from their original positions. The Empire began to feel something unfamiliar. Unease. At last, a transmission was intercepted, not sent to the Empire, but between human military channels. It was heavily encrypted, but one phrase repeated often enough to be isolated. Special forces. The term meant little to Imperial linguists at first. Every species had elite troops, honor guards, shock units. Nothing extraordinary. But the context was wrong. These were not armies being deployed. There were no troop numbers, no fleet coordination, no supply chains mentioned. Only teams, insertions, objectives, and silence. Grand Admiral Vorkesh stared at the projection, his confidence thinning. "Where are their fleets?" he demanded. The intelligence director hesitated. "We don't believe they've launched any." "Impossible." "Sir," the director said carefully, "it appears humanity did not send an army." The chamber fell quiet. Far beyond Imperial sensors, a small human vessel powered down its drives and drifted into the void. No markings, no transponder. Inside, armored figures checked weapons, synchronized watches, and reviewed objectives without speaking. They had already been here for days. Humanity called them special forces. The Galactic Empire would soon learn why it prayed they had never met them. Ghosts in the machine. The Galactic Empire responded the only way it knew how. With force. Within days of the first unexplained losses, entire sectors were placed under military lockdown. Patrol density tripled. Sensor arrays were recalibrated. Biometric scans became mandatory at every checkpoint. The Empire did not believe in invisible enemies. If something could bleed, it could be hunted. And if it could not be found, then it did not exist. Yet the disappearances continued. On the fortress world of Valkyris, a planet designed solely for war, the Empire stationed 3 full legions and enough firepower to crack a moon. Its command citadel was buried beneath kilometers of reinforced alloy and energy shielding, accessible only through controlled transit shafts. That was where the next incident occurred. At precisely 0300 local time, the Citadel's internal clocks desynchronized by 3 seconds. It was barely noticeable, an error so small it would normally be ignored. But in those 3 seconds, every external sensor blinked offline. When the system recovered, one thing had changed. The Supreme Sector Commander was gone. No alarms had triggered. No doors were breached. The room showed no sign of struggle. His sidearm remained holstered. His personal guard stood outside the chamber, still at attention, still alive. They had heard nothing. Panic spread quietly. Imperial doctrine forbade fear. Fear led to disorder, and disorder led to defeat. Official communiques described the losses as isolated technical anomalies. Officers were instructed to maintain discipline and suppress rumors. But soldiers talked. They spoke of shadows where none should exist, of footsteps echoing in sealed corridors, of voices, soft, calm, and speaking flawless Imperial standard, issuing instructions over internal comms that later proved to be fabricated. One infantry squad on Karth Prime reported receiving evacuation orders directly from Planetary Command. The codes were valid. The voice was correct. They followed the instructions precisely. They were later found standing in formation in an abandoned hangar, weapons stacked neatly at their feet, unaware that 6 hours had passed. None of them could explain where they had been. Captured security footage from multiple worlds began to reveal patterns. The images were fragmented, corrupted at critical moments, but certain details remained consistent. Human figures, not in large numbers, never more than 4 or 5 at a time, always moving with deliberate calm. They avoided direct confrontation whenever possible, slipping past patrols, bypassing locked systems, exploiting blind spots the Empire had never imagined existed. They did not fight battles. They performed surgeries. Imperial analysts struggled to adapt. The Empire's strength lay in mass. Armies that crushed resistance through overwhelming presence. Their defenses were designed to repel fleets, not phantoms. Their doctrines assumed enemies would announce themselves with banners, formations, and predictable objectives. Humans did none of that. Instead, power grids failed at critical moments. Supply depots burned without explosions. Command networks fractured, not from attack, but from mistrust. Officers began verifying orders in person. Meetings were delayed. Responses slowed. Fear seeped in. A breakthrough came when an Imperial patrol finally captured a human operative on Valkyris. He had allowed it. The human was found sitting in a maintenance corridor, helmet removed, weapon resting on the floor beside him. He did not resist. His biometric readings were steady, his expression unreadable. Interrogation began immediately. He gave no name, no rank, no unit designation. When asked how many humans had infiltrated Valkyris, he answered simply, enough. When asked where they were, he smiled. You're asking the wrong question, he said. You should be asking when. The interrogators grew frustrated. Threats were issued. Pain compliance protocols prepared. The human leaned forward, chains clinking softly. Before you do that, he said calmly, you might want to check your external defense grid. Alarms erupted across the facility. The grid hadn't been destroyed. It had been rewritten. Every automated weapon platform now recognized Imperial vessels as hostile. Defensive fire tore through the orbital perimeter, shredding 2 cruisers before emergency overrides could be enacted. By the time control was restored, the human's restraints lay open on the floor. He was gone. The Empire's High Council reconvened in emergency session. For the first time in its history, the phrase existential threat was spoken without exaggeration. These are not soldiers, one counselor whispered. They are weapons. Intelligence finally pieced together a profile. Human special forces were trained to operate alone or in small units for extended periods. They were taught alien psychology, languages, and command structures. They studied fear, not to avoid it, but to use it. Their objective was not conquest. It was collapse. Grand Admiral Vorkash watched reports stream in from across Imperial space. Worlds surrendering without a shot fired, garrisons requesting reassignment, commanders resigning in disgrace. His mandibles trembled. We face an enemy that does not wish to fight us, he said slowly. A junior officer looked up, confused. Then what do they want, sir? Vorkash stared at the screen, where a single intercepted human message repeated across multiple frequencies. We are already among you. For us, he answered, to stop believing we can win. The meaning of terror. The Galactic Empire decided to stop bleeding quietly. Imperial doctrine shifted overnight from containment to annihilation. Entire sectors were placed under martial law. Worlds suspected of human infiltration were quarantined. Fleets were ordered to conduct saturation bombardments on their own installations rather than risk further compromise. If the enemy could not be found, then everything would burn. It did not work. On the scorched moon of Dravex, Imperial legions landed amid the ruins of their own orbital strikes. They expected to find human corpses or equipment, proof that destruction had finally caught up to the ghosts haunting them. They found nothing. Instead, logistics collapsed within hours. Fuel depots failed quality checks. Ammunition stockpiles reported incorrect counts. Navigation data conflicted between identical systems. Officers spent more time verifying reality than commanding troops. The humans were not destroyed by fire. They had anticipated it. Across Imperial space, the pattern became undeniable. The Special Forces did not defend territory. They abandoned worlds willingly, only to return after the Empire declared them cleansed. They let the Empire waste fleets, munitions, and morale, fighting empty ground. Human warfare was not about holding lines. It was about erasing the enemy's ability to function. On Tesseract Station, a major logistics hub, the Empire committed 5 full divisions to a sweeping counterinsurgency. Every corridor was flooded with troops. Every door was monitored. Every vent was sealed. Then the station's artificial gravity shut down. Not completely, just enough to disorient. Soldiers drifted. Equipment floated. Training dissolved into chaos. In that moment of confusion, the humans struck, not with gunfire, but with precision. Command staff were isolated. Data cores were extracted. Navigation algorithms were altered by a fraction of a percent. When gravity returned, Tesseract Station still existed. But it was useless. Convoys began arriving at the wrong coordinates. Fleets jumped light years off target. Ships collided in empty space, unable to reconcile contradictory navigation data. The Empire's strength, its scale, became its weakness. A captured Imperial strategist, High Logister Carell, finally understood this when he was brought face-to-face with a human commander. The meeting did not take place in a cell or courtroom, but in a quiet room aboard a neutral station. No restraints, no guards. The human wore a simple uniform, unadorned by rank. "You are losing," the human said without hostility. "Not because your fleets are weak, but because they are slow." Carell recoiled. "We outnumber you 1,000 to 1. The human nodded. "Yes, that's why this works." He explained it then, not as a threat, but as a lesson. Human special forces were not designed to win wars alone. They existed to make wars unwinnable for the enemy. Every operation was calculated to force overreaction, to stretch supply lines, to break trust between commanders and their systems. "You rely on certainty," the human said. "We introduce doubt." Reports from the front confirmed it. Imperial allies began defecting, offering intelligence in exchange for protection. Some worlds surrendered preemptively, terrified of being chosen as the next demonstration. They had learned the truth. If human special forces were present, it meant humanity cared enough to intervene, but not enough to negotiate yet. The most devastating revelation came when Carell accessed restricted data during his captivity. Humanity had not mobilized. Shipyards on Earth were operating at civilian capacity. Reserve fleets remained docked. Planetary defenses were unchanged. The special forces represented a fraction of humanity's military power. "This is restraint," Carell whispered. When he was returned to Imperial space as part of a prisoner exchange, he carried a message, not an ultimatum, but a warning. The Empire ignored it. The final blow was psychological. On the Imperial capital world, during a live broadcast meant to reassure the population, the Emperor's speech was interrupted. The lights dimmed. The broadcast feed shifted. A human face appeared on every screen across the planet. "We are not here to conquer you," the human said calmly. "We are here to show you what resistance costs." The feed cut out. Panic surged through the capital. Protests erupted. Faith in Imperial invincibility shattered. Religious orders began issuing prayers not for victory, but for mercy. Grand Admiral Vorkesh stood alone in the Hall of Triumph, watching worlds slip away without battle. "We are not fighting humans," he realized aloud. "We are fighting inevitability." Far from the capital, a human team exfiltrated silently, mission complete. They had not destroyed the Empire's fleets. They had destroyed its belief in itself. And that, humanity knew, was the true meaning of terror. Why the Empire prayed. The Galactic Empire did not collapse in fire. It collapsed in silence. Fleets still existed. Armies still marched. Star systems still paid tribute. Yet something fundamental had broken. The certainty that had once bound the Empire together. Orders were questioned. Intelligence was doubted. Commanders hesitated, fearing that every decision might already be anticipated by unseen human eyes. When the Emperor finally requested negotiations, it was framed as strength. But everyone knew it was surrender wearing ceremonial armor. The talks were held on Aurelian Station, a neutral construct older than the Empire itself. Its halls had witnessed the end of civilizations, though none as vast as this one. Imperial security was absolute. Layered scans, biometric verification, energy fields tuned to detect neural anomalies. None of it detected the human delegation until they stepped into the chamber. There were 6 of them. No exosuits, no visible weapons. plain uniforms bearing no insignia. They moved with the quiet confidence of people who had already measured every threat in the room. Imperial guards tightened their grips on ceremonial rifles. The lead human spoke first. "You asked for terms." The Emperor studied them from his elevated dais. He had imagined monsters. He found professionals. "You have terrorized my empire," the Emperor said. "You have crippled worlds without declaring war." The human inclined her head slightly. "We ended your war before it reached ours." She gestured, and a hologram bloomed between them. Data streams, timelines, projections. "This is what full mobilization looks like," she said. The display shifted. The scale was incomprehensible. Fleets that dwarfed the Empire's own reserves. Industrial output measured not in ships, but in eras. Defense grids layered so densely they resembled solid walls of light. The hologram vanished. "What you faced," she continued, "was less than 1% of our capacity." The chamber was utterly still. An Imperial counselor found his voice. "Then why not destroy us?" "Because we don't need to," the human replied. "And because destruction is inefficient." She explained it plainly. Human special forces were not elite because of superior weapons. Other species had comparable technology. They were elite because of doctrine, because humanity accepted uncertainty, autonomy, and moral burden in ways the Empire never had. Each operative was trained to think independently, to act without orders, to improvise under impossible conditions, to accept isolation, long-term infiltration, and the knowledge that success might never be publicly acknowledged. "We don't send them to win battles," the human said. "We send them so wars don't need to be fought at all." The Emperor lowered his gaze. "You turned fear into a weapon." "Yes," she agreed, "because fear travels faster than fleets." The terms were simple. The Empire would withdraw from all human-aligned worlds. It would recognize humanity as a sovereign equal. It would dissolve certain military doctrines, those built entirely on mass and intimidation, and submit to monitor reforms. In return, humanity would withdraw its special forces. The Emperor hesitated only once. "If we agree," he asked, "will your operatives truly leave?" The human smiled, not unkindly. "They already have." The treaty was signed without ceremony. Across Imperial space, human teams exfiltrated one by one. No victory parades followed. No announcements were made. The galaxy simply stabilized. Years passed. Imperial academies quietly rewrote their curricula. Cadets were taught new lessons: flexibility, redundancy, humility. The phrase special forces was removed from public records, replaced with a forbidden classification marked only by warning sigils. Among civilians, the stories became myths. Of lights turning off at the wrong time. Of voices speaking calmly in the dark. Of enemies who did not hate you, but dismantled you anyway. Centuries later, when the Empire encountered new civilizations and offered protection, it included an unspoken clause: do not threaten humanity. And if you ever learn the phrase special forces from human lips, understand this. They are not coming. They are already there. That was why the Galactic Empire prayed. Not for victory, but that would never again earn humanity's attention.